Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the most fascinating and often, let's be honest, the murkiest corners of human knowledge.
Absolutely.
Have you ever stopped and wondered how historical stories, those narratives we all sort of learn, are actually put together?
Yeah. Or even how they might get twisted deliberately sometimes.
Exactly. Or even weaponized, to push a certain agenda. It's this huge challenge, isn't it? Sifting through everything, trying to figure out what's a real, verifiable fact versus what's just, well, what everyone thinks is true, especially with controversial stuff.
It really is like a puzzle, a massive, complex puzzle. Every piece of history, every truth we think we know, it has its own backstory, how it was made, how it spread, how it changed.
And that backstory is often way more complicated and maybe more revealing than the simple version we usually get.
Definitely.
So that's what we do here at the Deep Dive. We take your sources, could be articles, research, or like today, something a bit unusual.
Yeah, definitely unusual today.
And we pull out the most important bits, the key insights. The mission is to give you a shortcut to being genuinely informed, maybe find some surprising things, and, keep it interesting.
Keep you hooked.
Right. And today, we're diving into something pretty unique. Our main source is this banned lecture from 1930, delivered by Aleister Crowley. It's called Gilles de Rais.
Yeah, it's a ride. This lecture, it was meant for a university poetry society, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it's provocative right from the start, full of strong opinions, sharp sarcasm, a really independent, almost contrarian view.
So our goal here isn't to say Crowley's right or wrong. Some of his views are, frankly, pretty out there.
Definitely.
But it's to explore his arguments, his ideas, and just try to understand the perspective this specific document offers. Like, peeling back the layers on this one very outspoken historical voice.
Exactly. Seeing the world through his particular, maybe slightly warped lens for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So your mission, listening in, is to join us. We want to help you get a handle on these complex ideas quickly, find those aha moments, and not feel buried by all the info.
Right.
We're going to look at how knowledge gets built, how it gets distorted, and maybe even, as this lecture suggests, how it gets weaponized. All through the lens of Gilles de Rais. Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, so to kick things off, the lecture jumps right into this almost philosophical look at knowledge, certainty. How sure can we be about anything?
And it starts with this great story about Thomas Henry Huxley, the biologist, grandfather of Aldous Huxley.
Right, famous scientist.
Right.
And Crowley uses this story about Huxley to, well, set up his own very different way of talking to an audience.
It's clever. So Huxley, the story goes, had to give a lecture.
Yeah.
And he's wondering, okay, what do I assume these people already know?
A classic speaker's dilemma.
Totally. And he asks for advice and gets this very stark choice. You must do one of two things. You may assume that they know everything or that they know nothing.
Black and white.
Pretty much. And Huxley chose nothing. Assume they know nothing. Start for the basics.
Which sounds reasonable enough, maybe.
You think, but Crowley just jumps all over it with total sarcasm. He doesn't just disagree. He says it shows Huxley was badly brought up.
Ouch.
Yeah. And then he throws in this really nasty jab, linking it to Huxley becoming a dirty little atheist who supposedly repented on his deathbed. It's intense.
Wow. So right away, you know this isn't your standard academic talk.
Not even close.
Yep.
It's personal, it's biased, maybe even a bit venomous. He's setting a very specific, aggressive tone.
Okay. And then he does the opposite of Huxley, right? He says he'll assume the audience knows everything about Gilles de Rais.
Exactly. Makes it impertinent for him to tell them anything.
Yeah.
Such a witty, provocative move.
It kind of puts you on the spot as a listener, doesn't it?
It does. It challenges you. Like, okay, what do I actually know? Or what do I think I know? It sets the stage perfectly for questioning everything.
He's basically saying, don't expect me to just feed you facts.
Right. We're going to take things apart. It's a deconstruction, not a lecture.
And he's even skeptical about lecturing itself. He says a discussion would be more amusing, if scarcely as informative.
Yeah, he really doesn't seem to rate lectures very highly. Calls it merely an attempt foredoomed to failure to communicate knowledge which usually the lecturer does not possess.
So he's undermining his own format right from the beginning. What does that tell you about his view of knowledge? Can it even be communicated reliably like that?
That's the question, isn't it? It suggests he thinks real understanding comes from somewhere else, not just passively receiving information.
And that dark joke about discussions with blackthorns or shotguns?
Yeah. That really drives home his contempt for polite, maybe sterile academic chat. He's implying real debate, Real engagement is maybe rougher, more honest, almost violent.
A pretty cynical take on intellectual life.
Extremely cynical. And it leads him, he says, to feeling very depressed. He focuses on that word knowledge, a word of which we hear so much and see so little.
That hits hard, the gap between the word and the reality.
Exactly. And that's why he stresses we need to be very careful to define what we mean by the word knowledge.
He brings in that story about the university lecture too, right? The economics guy.
Oh, yeah, the Dud University and the speaker, like old red sandstone.
Yeah.
Hilarious description.
And the point was?
The point was that the economics guy said it was hard to make theories because there were no reliable data.
So if the basic information, the data, is unreliable,
then what good are the theories built on top of it? It perfectly sums up Crowley's skepticism about conventional knowledge. If the foundations are shaky, the whole building might be unstable.
which sets us up nicely for looking at historical facts. How reliable are they?
Precisely. And he uses the Battle of Waterloo as his test case. Ask the audience, does anyone here know the date?
Expecting 1815, of course.
Right, which he says he didn't even need to know. He just wanted a sympathetic atmosphere. But the date isn't the real point.
The point is everything else about Waterloo. How much do we really know?
Exactly. He lists all these different reasons for Napoleon's loss. Was he sick? Did Wellington outsmart him? Were his troops poorly trained and fed? Or did the Belgians actually win it?
So many possibilities.
And he argues these are all just matters of opinion. Even if there's documents supporting them, we have practically no means of finding out exactly how much truth is in any one theory.
Because the causes are just too complex, infinite even.
That's his argument. Almost impossible to estimate the causes, if only because those causes are infinite. Every single tiny thing could have played a part.
Like his example about the hens laying eggs.
Brilliant, isn't it? So specific. If it had been winter instead of summer, the hens would not have been laying, and Hougoumont and La Haye-Saint would not have been able to nourish the contending forces.
It makes you realize how these huge events hang on tiny, unpredictable threads. Weather, food supply, stuff you never think about.
The butterfly effect in history. But he does concede some things are solid.
Okay, like what? Like the battle was fought. It was won. It was the end of Napoleon's campaigns. Napoleon was born in Corsica, rose through the army, military genius, political intrigue, all that stuff.
And so the basic scaffolding is there, confirmed by lots of evidence.
Right, a vast body of indirect evidence. These core facts hold up. It's the why and the how that dissolve into uncertainty.
Okay, facts versus opinions, core events versus causes.
Hmm.
But then he shifts to Napoleon's character.
And that's where it gets even messier. A mass of contradictions.
Yeah.
Every writer paints a totally different Napoleon.
They all use authentic anecdotes.
Exactly. Authentic but contradictory, which leads him to that great analogy.
The blind man and the elephant.
Yes, the 6 wise men of Hindustan. Each touches a different part, trunk, leg, ear, and describes something completely different. A snake, a tree, a fan.
But none of them grasp the whole elephant. Precisely. The truth is the whole thing, but our individual perspective, even based on authentic data, is always partial limited. It means true understanding needs. Well, it needs more than one perspective. You have to try and see the whole elephant.
It's a fantastic way to think about history or people. Our view is always incomplete.
Always. And that's the mindset Crowley wants us to bring to Gilles de Rais, a figure even more wrapped in myth and contradiction than Napoleon.
Right. So, as Crowley says, spiritually fortified by thinking about Waterloo and Napoleon, let's apply this to Gilles de Rais. What do we really know? Stripping away the legend.
Okay, the verifiable stuff, according to the lecture. Born around 1404.
Check.
Married Catherine de Thenars in 1420, making him the richest noble in Europe. Huge wealth, huge status.
Lived large, got into alchemy with a priest, Gilles de Rais.
Yep, important point.
Yeah.
He was a gentleman of good family, held high office, which required status.
And critically, fought alongside Joan of Arc.
Yes, a brave soldier and a comrade of Joan of Arc. At the Siege of Orleans. That connection is huge, especially given what happened to both of them.
Interesting. What else?
He had a passion for science, sought out learned men, and this is maybe the most striking parallel Crowley draws.
Go on.
He was accused of the same crimes as Joan of Arc by the same people who accused her and got the same sentence, burned at the stake.
Wow. The same accuser, same crime, same penalty.
Crowley hammers this home.
That.
These are the verifiable facts. Everything else, speculation. It forces you to question the monster myth right away.
Okay, but then there are the accusations, the really horrific ones. Montague Summers claiming he sacrificed 800 children.
Right, the claim that cemented the legend. Crowley sources this to the proceedings of ecclesiastical high court. The Inquisition was involved, Dominican priest Chamblon.
And Gilles de Rais?
He confessed. Under those circumstances, yes. And was executed, put to the stake and charcoaled on October 26, 1440.
But Crowley immediately points out what happened next, doesn't he? With the money.
Oh, yeah. Cynically, but maybe accurately. Gilles's estates and untold riches went straight to Mother Church, who, as Crowley puts it, didn't waste any time adding them to the balance sheet.
So a massive financial motive for the church to get rid of him, the richest guy in Europe. That's quite an inheritance.
It certainly puts the accusations in a different light, doesn't it? Was it really about heresy, or was it about consolidating wealth and power? Removing this incredibly powerful independent figure who was also messing with science.
And it wasn't just money. His manuscripts, too.
Yes, Gilles' personal hand-painted manuscripts welcomed into the Vatican vaults, where they sit to this day.
And Crowley makes a point about access, right?
He does. Notes the library is inaccessible to common folk, and will be until the church itself collapses, at which point Crowley volunteers to help turn it into a public library.
A definite critique of the church hoarding knowledge, controlling information.
Absolutely. Knowledge as treasure, locked away, like his wealth.
So bringing it back to Gilles, Crowley says the real problem is that he was basically the male equivalent of Joan of Arc.
It's a powerful comparison. Both became huge symbols, but their historical images flipped dramatically.
Right. Joan of Arc in Shakespeare's time
Was seen as vile in England. Shakespeare paints her as a sorceress, a fraud, a coward, a slut. That was the official narrative for ages. Served the purpose.
But then later, she gets completely whitewashed.
Totally rewritten.
Well.
When, as Crowley sarcastically puts it, they decided that she was a virgin, which he calls a sexually deranged animal, a concept that has always got people going.
Wow, harsh.
Very. But his point is, her stock soared right up to sainthood, shows how drastically narratives can be manipulated over time for political or religious reasons. Truth is flexible.
And Gilles de Rais got the opposite treatment. He became the ultimate symbol of evil.
Equally a household word for monstrous vices and crimes. So much so he gets mixed up with Bluebeard, the fairy tale character.
Yeah, the lines blur completely between the man and the myth. The legend just swallows him whole.
Exactly. He becomes an archetype, not a person.
Which brings us back to that number, 800 children, the core accusation.
Crowley asks, what is the most precise and most atrocious charge? That he sacrificed a matter of 800 children.
And he immediately says
That it sounds a little improbable, just on the face of it, a priori.
And he breaks down why logistically.
Right. Gilles was lord of the district, yes, but the population wasn't huge. Even in that brutal era, slavery, dirt, disease, debauchery, poverty, and ignorance, could you really pull off abductions and murders on that scale without anyone noticing?
The numbers just seem staggering for the time and place.
They do. And there's the time factor. Crowley points out that scientific experiment back then was slow.
Like exposing things to the sun and moon for months.
Yeah. So if these were alchemical and magical experiments, as the charges claimed, how does that fit with killing hundreds of kids? It doesn't quite mesh.
The pacing is off.
Way off. And the math. Crowley calculates even sacrificing one child every single day.
Would take 2.5 years for 800 kids.
2.5 years of daily kidnappings and murders. In secret. In one area. It strains belief, doesn't it? Just the practical side.
Forget the horror, just the logistics are insane.
He's almost using dark humor to show the absurdity. And he asked the killer question. Did the disappearance of the first 400, say, put no parents on their guard?
You'd think so. It's like his analogy about the cats.
Perfect. The kid claiming millions of cats on the wall, but admits it was just Tom and another. It highlights the likely exaggeration. He's urging us to apply common sense to this monstrous claim. 800 sounds more like hyperbole than a real number.
It's hard to imagine that scale of crime staying secret.
Very hard. And this skepticism leads Crowley to a really radical claim about black magic itself.
Okay, what's the claim?
He argues that things like black masses, devil worship, they're strictly functions of Christianity.
Whoa, that's controversial, flipping the script entirely.
Completely. He says in other great world traditions, there is no trace of any such perversion. He pins it squarely on Christianity's concept of God, specifically the bloodthirsty and futile Jehovah.
So Christianity created the concepts it condemns.
That's his argument. These monstrous births, these ideas of diabolism, only grow in the poisonous mire of fear and shame where thought has putrefied to Christianity. It's a deeply critical view.
So applying that to Gilles.
He says there's no antecedent improbability that Gilles, or anyone Catholic back then, was involved in black magical practices, precisely because they were Catholics. These practices were a dark reflection, a shadow side of the dominant religion itself.
Okay, so if that's the context, the church's power becomes key.
Absolutely. In the pitch-dark ages, Crowley argues, the powerful saw the pursuit of knowledge of any kind, as the only real danger.
Knowledge itself was the enemy.
Yes. He even points out that just 300 years before his lecture, so the 1600s, it wasn't considered very gentlemanly to be able to read or write. Literacy itself was suppressed or viewed with suspicion.
And he links grammar to magic. Grammary and grimoire.
It's a fascinating linguistic point. Grammar, rules of language, linked to grammary, magic spells often written, and grimoire, a magic book, literally just any written document. He's suggesting the church deliberately associated literacy and written knowledge with dark arts.
To control people, make reading itself seem dangerous.
That's the implication. Keep knowledge contained. He says precious little knowledge filtered through Christianity because it wasn't in the church's interest. Easier to suppress ideas back then.
He even jokes about priests in 1930 not knowing about the printing press.
Huh? Yeah. The notorious magician inspired by the devil Gutenberg. It highlights that long history of resistance to spreading information freely. So anyone pursuing knowledge was automatically suspicious, possibly a heretic.
But some knowledge was tolerated, people with useful skills.
Right. Jews, Arabs, people who carried old knowledge, often orally. They were tolerated, perforce, because their skills were just too useful.
Like making armor, building cathedrals, healing, practical stuff.
Exactly. Stuff that helped Christians get ahead. So maximum persecution was okay, up to a point. You couldn't wipe out the people whose knowledge you actually needed. A very pragmatic, cynical tolerance.
Okay, this leads us into another really tricky and honestly quite disturbing part of the lecture. Crowley's take on the Pope, knowledge, power, and fear. And he connects it to the politics of his own time.
Yes, this is where he brings in the Jew Bolshevist peril. And again, it's absolutely crucial for you listening to understand. We're just relaying Crowley's analysis from 1930. We are not endorsing these hateful conspiratorial views in any way.
Absolutely not. We're examining his argument. So he claims the Pope knew knowledge was power.
Right. And he argues the Pope feared that the Jews and the Arabs might get together and overturn the whole construction of society. He links this ancient fear directly to the anti-Semitic, anti-communist paranoia of the 1930s. He even suggests Catholics pushing this idea didn't realize Rome is laughing in its sleeve at them.
Implying the church manipulates these prejudices.
That's his claim. He then asks this inflammatory question about what destroyed Rome.
And his answer.
The slave morality of Jewish communists of the period. It's an outrageous statement.
He tries to back it up with the Bible. Acts.
Yeah, Acts 4.32, about early believers having all things in common. Then the story of Ananias, who held back money and was struck dead. Crowley twists this into proof of Jewish communism, arguing this is Catholic logic. Jews are communists. Anyone seeking knowledge must be a Jew, therefore.
Therefore, a threat to be contained. Preparedness, or as he cynically calls it, disarmament.
Exactly. His point about scrapping battleships when you found something cheaper and more deadly, he suggests the Vatican always had a weapon in reserve for a pogrom, a deeply cynical view of power.
And how do you incite ordinary people to violence?
Only two levers work, he says. Greed and fear.
Greed was used for the Crusades, stories of Eastern wealth.
That's his example. Promises of riches got people moving, though he claims only the organized groups like the Templars really profited, while the honest, pious mugs got ruined.
But greed didn't work so well against knowledge seekers like the Jews. They were too smart, too connected.
So he claims, which left fear as the main tool, and fear works best where there's ignorance. He uses the example of Halley's Comet causing panic in Venice.
Despite the Pope's blessing, people panicked because they were kept ignorant.
Precisely. Ignorance breeds fear. So it was easy, he argues, to link knowledge-seeking with terrible crimes. Thus, the stereotype. Jews were sorcerers and wizards.
In other words, they know something about grammar. His little joke again.
Right, and he mentions the really absurd accusations transforming into cats or bats, sucking toes, stuff designed to highlight the irrationality.
Just wild stuff, but he says not everyone bought it. There was some common sense.
Yeah, some shrewd common sense knocking about. You couldn't just tell people to go murder their neighbors instantly. You needed something more. tangible, something that hit closer to home.
So how do you create that tangible thing? He talks about ad captandum arguments.
Right. Arguments designed specifically to capture the audience's emotions or prejudices, not their reason. He says they're produced out of nowhere for a definite purpose and do not rhyme with anything.
Meaning they don't make logical sense.
Exactly. If they did, you could pick them apart. But because they're illogical, emotionally driven, nobody can disprove it any more than they can prove it. It exists outside of proof.
Like modern conspiracy theories, maybe? Impossible to debunk because they aren't based on facts to begin with?
It's the blueprint for effective slander. And gives that personal example, the writer who accused him of running a suicide club in Germany.
Based on Robert Louis Stevenson.
Right. Made up statistics, claimed Crowley was the president, police were after him.
Yeah.
All fabricated.
And Crowley's point is...
How could he possibly disprove it? He can't prove he isn't responsible for suicides in Germany. It's impossible to disprove a negative, especially one pulled out of thin air.
So now, you know how to set to work if you want to attack someone. Chillin'.
And he notes how the story was tailored. Beautiful, rich young women killing themselves, the wicked president blackmailing them.
Playing on desires. Sex and money.
Exactly. Feeding a wish phantasm for the audience. Tapping into fantasies of power and wealth projected onto the villain.
So, back in the Middle Ages, how did this work? Not so different, he says.
The Jew always had hidden, ill-gotten wealth. Greed was part of it, but the real trigger, the most potent fear.
Children.
Children, the peasant's dearest treasure. Little Tommy wanders off. Parents panic.
And you exploit that panic, plant the idea, kidnapped by the Jews for purposes of ritual murder.
The blood libel. An ad captandum argument hitting the deepest fear linked to existing prejudice. Horrifyingly effective.
So, tying this all back to Gilles de Rais, Killdew's conclusion is
that the main accusation against Gilles is just this general accusation leveled against anyone in Christendom who dared to want knowledge. Gilles was just a prominent target.
A convenient scapegoat onto whom these fears could be projected.
Pretty much. And in his case, it got concentrated and exaggerated to fantastic lengths, maybe because of his wealth and status, though Crowley doesn't speculate too much on the why.
But he's certain about one thing.
The one thing of which I feel certain is that 800 children is a lot. He comes back to the sheer implausibility, the logistical absurdity. It's his final dismissal of that core charge.
Okay. Now, he anticipates people might accuse him of being biased, right? Paid off by Jewish interests or something.
Yeah, a common tactic then, and maybe even now, to discredit someone challenging prejudice. Yeah. So he offers another example, one with which Jews had nothing to do.
And he brings in Robert Southey, the poet laureate.
Yep. Whom Crowley seems slightly unsure about as a species of animal. Southey wrote this poem, The Old Woman of Berkeley, where the devil comes for her.
And Crowley remembers lines about
candles made of infant's fat and feasted on rifled graves. Gruesome stuff.
But then Southey wrote another poem with similar imagery. Infant fat, rifled graves, the devil.
Right. But this one, Crowley points out, isn't about witchcraft. It's called The Surgeon's Warning.
The connection. This is the surgeon and the synthesis.
Exactly. This is Crowley's best evidence for his thesis, whatever that is, he jokes. But the point is serious.
What is the point? The connection?
In the minds of people who believe in witches making candles from babies, the surgeon, the person pursuing knowledge to heal people, is seen as the same kind of animal as the witch or the ritual-murdering Jew.
Because the fear isn't about the specific act, it's about challenging norms, pursuing forbidden knowledge.
Precisely. The attack on surgeons focused on the fact they needed corpses to dissect.
Which violated taboos about the dead.
Deeply ingrained taboos. So dissection became sacrilege, surgeons became ghouls.
And it was hard to get bodies legally back then, hence the image of the body snatcher.
Right. The popular image, reflected in Dickens. The healer, the knowledge seeker, gets branded as a criminal simply because their work violates a superstition, a taboo.
So Gilles de Rais
was likely, Crowley argues, to a large extent the victim of Catholic logic. A logic that generates foul wish phantasms from its own repressions, fears, and ignorance.
It projects its own anxieties onto anyone outside the box.
That's the idea. The tragic irony, as Crowley frames it. Gilles wanted to confer a boon on humanity through science alchemy. So he consorted with the learned, and therefore, by this twisted logic, he murdered little children.
The pursuit of knowledge itself becomes the crime, leading to the most monstrous accusations.
That's the absurd, chilling conclusion Crowley presents.
Wow. Okay, that brings us to the end of this really intense deep dive into Crowley's lecture. Our goal was to unpack this challenging source, explore its unique, very strong opinions on knowledge, truth, and how history gets written.
Yeah, we've seen how Gilles de Rais becomes this focal point for bigger questions about narrative, power, and the suppression of knowledge. From questioning the sheer possibility of the crimes to analyzing how fear gets manufactured. It's a stark perspective.
Definitely cynical, but thought-provoking. And Crowley ends with that final cryptic line about the candle lit by martyrs being made of infant's fat.
Right, referencing the Protestant martyrs Latimer and Ridley, whose candle of truth supposedly lit England. But Crowley twists it, connecting it back to the taboo imagery surrounding surgeons and witches.
And then the joke, it is no use you're starting to rifle Graves, meaning the poet Robert Graves, because his publishers might resent you interference.
Hey. It's a final layered jab about how knowledge is pursued, suppressed, and maybe misunderstood, tying the surgeon, the witch, the martyr, and the poet all together through this lens of dangerous taboo knowledge, suggesting truth often comes from uncomfortable places.
So for you listening, maybe take this perspective and think about the stories you accept. What counts as knowledge versus opinion in your world?
And what are the hidden forces, the historical currents, or maybe the fears and desires shaping the narratives we take for granted?
Lots to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.